I'm not that damn smart. You know how easy this is? Jesus. But no one wants to do it. No one has the instinct or the will to execute anything real. They only execute failure.
Can't hear it.
Bobby, what is going on, my man? How are you?
Matt Spurrier, doing well, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah?
And it's great to get jazzed up with that intro clip we had from Alex Jones telling about how no one else can do this and they're a bunch of failures, because that's what we feel like.
It's like every group project.
It's like
I saw
every
the
single
memes
group
on that.
project.
That was hilarious. Alex Jones, a little out there, but man, he comes up with some good 15 seconds of content.
Yeah, of course he does. He's the man. And sorry, I just need to fix something on the interwebs. The screen sharing looks to be slowing down my computer, so you'll have to improvise and just deal with my voice, Bob. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's do a regular show opening. Welcome to the Ombudsman Report podcast. My name is Matthew Spurrier. Joined with me, as always, is Bobby Juliana. We do this about once a week, give or take, where we talk about news, politics, culture, all the craziness, all the big stories. And like every week, no shortage of big stories. We were talking about what we were discussing before the show we were going to talk about, and sort of like the order to go in. But we sort of couldn't help ourselves by starting with our favorite sad journalist, Jim Acosta.
Jim Acosta.
He's
obsessed
something
with
else.
himself, first off.
It's like him and Comey are like the two biggest grandstanders, I would think, in 2018. I'm really not looking forward to Jim Acosta's book about being a persecuted journalist in 2018.
Well, I'm not going to read it, so.
You're right, I won't read it. Not too many people will. I'm sure his publisher will have to buy tons of copies to make it seem like people actually give a shit what Jim Acosta thinks. But he got in not too much trouble, but he was just sort of complaining.
I would say he got more attention on himself recently than normal.
Which he's always trying to do, right?
Than his normal interruptions at White House press briefings and things like that.
So, I just want to look at this. So, on the screen, this is the tweet that Jim Acosta sent out, and he said, quote, "Just a sample of the sad scene we face at the Trump rally in Tampa. I'm very worried that the hostility whipped up by Trump and some in conservative media will result in somebody getting hurt. We should not treat our fellow Americans this way. The press is not the enemy." And I'm not going to play the video sound, it's a little loud, but if you're watching on the screen, it's basically a bunch of Trump people saying screw Jim Acosta, screw the media.
It was some pretty wild video, let's be honest.
It was a pretty wild video, but this is what I have to say to this.
Okay.
He's acting like this is not normal. Has Jim Acosta ever gone to an Eagles game wearing a Dallas Cowboy shirt?
Fair enough.
You know what I mean?
I never even put it out of a political realm. I've been thinking of, comparables on the other side. But
this is how people who are on a team treat people who they perceive to be their rival. And it's a little bit scarier because it's politics, but it's not scary. We're in America, right? Trump people aren't going out putting hits out on the media. Right? It's not it's not like they say.
He's born yesterday. He's like, this could lead to violence, as if there hasn't been a lot of violence already, primarily coming from the left.
Right. Well, their violence is, often justified because they're trying to stop Heinrich Himmler from carrying out his, execution plans.
No, but we joke, but like Jim Acosta's like, I fear this could get violent. This is dangerous to our republic. It's like, yo, bro, 6 months ago, maybe about a year ago now at this point, Steve Scalise got shot on a baseball field by a Bernie Sanders MSNBC guy. You know what I mean? Like, there's real violence, legitimate things, but there's no self-reflection. And I say self because he's clearly of the left, and he just tries to play this nonpartisan line.
Right, and so what I pull up right here is Ben Shapiro's response, and I think it was a good response, a good take on this. It says,
I don't know if I've heard it. Play it.
It says, the reason people are annoyed by this tweet is that we have seen Trump supporters physically attacked at rallies. Congressman shot, like you just said.
What was it, San Jose or Chicago? They shut down a highway and started beating up Trump Trump supporters.
I mean, if you just go on YouTube, you can look at people stalking Trump support. I mean, it's Gavin McInnes, obviously, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but in his hyperbolic way, he goes, wearing a MAGA hat is kind of like being a pedophile. You just wear it and people stare at you and they're like, whoa, you know what you did. You know what's coming to you. And that's really, I mean, if you watch the videos, that's what it looks like. You see a bunch of, 5'4" girls dressed in all black saying they're going to beat the shit out of these grown men. But, Ben Shapiro has, Jim Acosta and the media had downplayed those stories for years, thinking history played today. And this is another good point that Ben Shapiro brings up. CNN had a full-scale gun control rally with shaming rituals against the NRA and Rubio. They had the witch trials where Marco Rubio had to stand in the center, and Jake Tapper, who's typically a pretty good journalist, I would say, of all the CNN guys, he's usually the best. But he sat there and let kids, parents, audience tell Marco Rubio that you are no different than a mass shooter.
Pretty much.
How about that for calling for violence? How about that for
destroying the climate? This is just why people don't trust the media, and why Acosta's punking himself, except for those people that are diehard anti-Trump people, because we remember all this. It wasn't that long ago, and like we've just pointed out in the last 2 minutes here, we can just think off the top of our heads of 15 instances where it's coming from the other side. But Jim Acosta gets heckled at a rally. What was he expecting?
He is such a pansy.
It's become a joke now just to yell CNN sucks, and you got Jim Acosta, the mouthpiece of CNN, right there. People are gonna chime in and yell CNN sucks. The rallies, I mean, they do get a little out of hand, but what are you gonna do about that? Have you not watched any of Trump's rallies since he started campaigning? I'm pretty sure CNN covered it wall to wall.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you get people together, a mob mentality sort of takes over, right? I mean, Jim Acosta is sort of painting this picture of America where people are just, Jim Acosta has to be armed guard security at all times because Trump supporters are out there looking for him. And that's just not the reality. The reality is these people go to Trump rallies to have fun because they like Trump, right? And this entire time, CNN is fake news, right? That's their whole spiel. Right. And so they react when they see the CNN sign. That's all it is. It's me seeing Tony Romo and saying, fuck you, Tony Romo.
Yes, but it goes deeper than that. The reason that they're booing CNN is because, obviously because they don't like CNN. But why do they not like CNN? They don't like CNN because, CNN likes to play this game where they're we're the arbiters of the First Amendment. We're we would defend the First Amendment. He gets heckled or he'll get kicked out of the, the press room. And he's like, it's the end of the First Amendment. And they try and blow it up because it's them getting shut down. Mm-hmm. But when Shannon Bream goes outside of the Supreme Court to cover the Brett Kavanaugh, the spontaneous rally of Brett Kavanaugh, Stop Kavanaugh, she couldn't do it. She got back and went into the studio and she was like, yeah, I didn't feel comfortable there at all. And that's a bunch of leftists, a bunch of people protesting Brett Kavanaugh. So, but when that happens, you're not going to hear the media say, this is terrible, this shouldn't be happening. Members of the media should be protected. This is going to lead to violence. They don't care. It's not them, but until it is, then CNN and Jim Acosta throw up their hands.
Yeah, the sort of sad reality is that on
they
both
play
sides
one side
of the aisle,
every time.
Exactly. It's both sides of the aisle are extreme in their rhetoric, obviously, and they're a bunch of. I mean, when you have groups of millions of people, you're going to find the crazies that will commit violence. I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's just he's painting a picture. Yeah, I mean. He's just painting a picture that's not realistic of the United States, I think. In his world, the press, this institution of the press is under siege. That's the world that they're living in, is that, Donald Trump is a dictator trying to silence the media. I mean, they compare him to Erdogan. They compare him to Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Did you see him talk to Sarah Huckabee Sanders about... Well, today, twice, she she did. She skated around it. They asked her directly, is the press the enemy of the people? And she's like, well, you guys ran on your own network someone who said that I should be, what was it? What did they say after she got heckled at that restaurant? That I should be publicly shamed as my punishment for life or something like that. Punishment for life because she's his press, what do we call that? But
she's press secretary.
But they play to only one side, and their memory is 10 seconds long when it involves anyone that isn't them. And people they see right through it. So I don't know why he expects anything different.
I mean, this rally, it's not like Trump was telling them to attack CNN. Do you want to interview Nancy Pelosi, who was telling her supporters to shame Trump supporters in the streets?
Right. Or Maxine Waters, when you meet him at gas stations, meet him at
Oh,
the
I'm
grocery
sorry, not
store.
not Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters. Correct. my apologies.
That's fine.
Apologies to Nancy Pelosi. That's probably the last time you'll ever hear me say that.
Yeah.
But this whole journalism thing is because they play double standard, and a double standard came again today. It blew up on Twitter about this recent hiring to the New York Times editorial board, Sarah Jeong.
This is very recent breaking news. This is today.
This is very recent, actually. And basically, if you're not tuned in, if you're not on Twitter, if you're not watching this, what happened is Sarah Jeong works at The Verge.
Basically, you'll see it later is the thing. It starts on Twitter. It won't make the nightly news tonight. Maybe it'll make Tucker because he had enough time. It's weird how things start on Twitter and it takes like 8 hours for it to get to other social media and then the actual mainstream media.
Yeah, well, the old mainstream media is dying. I was actually just looking at a chart. I wish I would have had it up here.
That's a good thing, by the way.
It was reporting done by how many people watch paid television. And it was something, it broke it down from like 12 to 17, 18 to 25, 30, or like something like that, 26 to 36 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was like aggregate over the past 2 years down like 46% of people are watching paid television. I mean, there's no point now. Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, these things are just way better.
John Nolte, formerly of, was he at Daily Wire? And now he's at Breitbart?
I don't know. He's a madman now.
He's a madman, but he tweets out the rating sheet fairly often and just highlights CNN and just tweets like all caps, ha 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 ha. But CNN doesn't break 1 million viewers even in prime time.
No, I think Anderson Cooper gets like 300,000 people.
Yeah, they're not very many. Sean Hannity's raking in like 2.5 million a night. He's got the highest rated show on TV, which is insane because I was watching it last night. Like, it is like propaganda, but then again, like, okay, 1 hour on Fox is like straight up propaganda, but then there's like 7 hours of subtle propaganda coming out of CNN. So what does it kind of wash out? Pretty much
depends what kind of propaganda you're interested in getting fed.
What you want to tune into.
But anyway, Sarah Jeong, back to this girl.
Continue.
She basically, and so as everyone should learn, they've been warning me and you about this since we were in 8th grade, right? Watch what you post on social media because your employers will find it. And I used to think I was going to get in trouble if I had like a picture of me drinking in the woods or something. But Sarah Jeong, she just gets to tweet out these racist epithets, and she's still by the New York Times. So what you're looking at on the screen, I'm just going to read out a couple for the people who can't look.
Oh, before you read them, especially in today's climate, I saw a couple of athletes that started deleting old tweets after that one pitcher got popped for being semi-racist, like when he was 15. He was very racist when he was 15.
Yikes.
I mean, if you're a celebrity or anyone of some prominence and you've got 40,000 tweets, you don't remember what you tweeted. It's a smart move at this point to just wipe it and start over. But here we are. So show them.
So she has this one: are white people genetically predisposed to burn faster in the sun, thus logically being only fit to live underground like graveling goblins? Oh man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white people. Hashtag cancel white people. One might winner bullshit. No one cares about women. I just realized why I can't stand watching Breaking Bad or Battlestar Galactica. The premise of both is just white people being miserable.
That's a great show.
So this is my thing. I don't really care what Sarah Jeong says about white people. I really couldn't give a shit. I just think it's really funny to put this up against the hypocrisy of the new rules. Because the rules are you're not allowed to say mean things on Twitter, and if you do, we're supposed to demand your firing. The rules are we're allowed to take you out of any contacts we wish, and the words on the paper, you're defined by the words, right?
Right.
Kevin Williamson, 15 seconds of a podcast where he's doing a thought experiment, gets him fired from The Atlantic.
Pretty much.
Sarah Jeong has, her response and her defense of these tweets was pretty funny. I mean, this was literally her defense was, As a woman of color on the internet, I have faced torrents of online hate, often along this vein. And it's, people, it's troll accounts, saying disgusting racist shit.
Right. Like, have you ever read YouTube comments?
Have you ever been on the internet? And it's like, one, I think it's hilarious. I didn't know Asian women were women of color. That just seems... I didn't know that they were allowed to do that. I thought...
Well, Harvard doesn't seem to think that, but...
Yeah, Harvard penalizes Asians because, they do so well. We've talked about that on the last podcast. But anyway, I think it's just funny how... First sentence, as a woman of color on the internet. So she frames this. I'm a victim. Before I even start, I'm a victim, so whatever...
Before she gets to the comma in the first sentence.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever I say after this, you have to take with a grain of salt because obviously I'm oppressed and I can't be held to the same standards as you. So then she posts 2 tweets by... They don't even have, like, real faces, it looks like. They're just... They're probably 14-year-old people who are bugging this Verge editor. And then, she says, I engaged in what I thought at the time as counter-trolling. It was intended as satire. I deeply regret that I mimicked the language of my harassers. Mind you, these tweets from her about white people span from 3 years.
Was this from the New York Times?
No, this is from her. This is from her.
This is from her?
I have the New York Times one right after this.
Okay.
These comments were not aired at general audiences because general audiences do not engage in general harassment campaigns. I can understand how hurtful these posts are out of context and will not do it again. So she's only saying she's not doing it again because she got caught. If you look at the tweets, what other context is there? They span like 3 years. It's not like she was just doing this one thought experiment on November 17th, 2016 and was like, no, guys, read the thread.
Right.
That's a bad thing. No, this was just her being an asshole on Twitter. So now that she's caught, she's backpedaling.
No,
so
back to your initial point. I don't really care.
Right.
Now that this is out, I can factor it in if I ever want to read one of her pieces, which I won't. But like,
exactly, that's what I said. I said I'm not gonna. I didn't know who Sarah Jeong was before, and I don't know after, and I don't really care. Right,
but we're in this weird. We have to care now. Like both sides. Well, actually, not even one side has to condemn it. There's now a scalp on the left. You got to wait another week. They're going to catch someone on the right, and we're just going to ping pong like this, finding 5-year-old tweets of people being, racist or being sexist or being whatever, something you don't like. Is this going to be a phase? How long does this last? It's got to burn itself out, right?
I would have thought it burned itself out a long time ago, and I don't think it's going to burn itself out until enough scalps have been taken, which is really unfortunate. And it's going to take the right scalps.
Yeah, like
it's going to take cultural, and it's going to take the important people at the top to be like, okay, maybe this game isn't worth playing anymore. But you also have just sort of what we were talking about in a similar vein, to steal her language right there, of the Trump rallies, where people in a mob mentality will just gang up. And it doesn't really matter. You're on the other team, so sucks to be you. I mean, it takes me 30 seconds to write a tweet telling me to go fuck yourself, or telling you to go fuck yourself, and then I forget about it. Meanwhile, you have thousands of people messaging you, and that's tough. I'm not a big fan of outrage bombs. I'm not a fan of this game where everything is taken out of context 3 years ago, and we're not allowed to move on. The New York Times decided that they're going to keep Sarah Jeong. Okay.
Good for them. That's their prerogative.
It's their prerogative. Okay, but now we know the rules. Now we're learning the rules.
Well, it's kind of like laying the groundwork. If you say like, oh, it was in response to, or you phrase it in the way that she did, it's now a pass. Like this is the first one to really escape the punishment in the last 15 heads that have been taken.
Yeah, she's definitely going to be getting off lucky. I just don't like how... So, obviously, conservative Twitter jumped on this because why not, right? I mean, they found a liberal doing exactly what they claim they hate.
Is that conservative Twitter?
Yeah, I would say so. I would think it's MAGA Twitter, sorry. I mean, they are different, for sure.
They're definitely different.
Sure, MAGA Twitter.
Dude, we need a new term. I want to drop that whole... It's just everything has to be put in a box.
I know. Well, it's hard to have these conversations if you don't have identifiers.
Right. If you don't have identifiers, but we've always talked about this. The identifiers are wrong, but I think there's like a slight change in that recently. Like you're seeing less and less of because I think they realize it's backfiring, of pinning people as alt-right. So now they'll say far-right, or they'll say, they're not fully lumping everyone into alt-right. That term has been less and less used, and it's more specific now to like clear Nazis.
Sure.
It took a while to get there, but I mean, just having to label things is problematic because it takes away nuance, which we talk about all the time. There is none,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I don't know, man. I hope we get over it soon.
Well, I mean, like you just said, it's going to take some big scalps, but we've already had some big scalps. I mean, now Franken's gone.
Is he coming back?
He's thinking about coming back. And the thing is, like, one, he could. I think he could.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd win. I don't know what the state's like in Minnesota, how that would play. But, I mean, I was listening to a podcast today, and he kind of came up. And, given the climate of everything and the way, I mean, we were talking about this pre-show. There's 400 plus sealed sexual harassment settlements of congressmen or staffers over the last like 15 years, paid for with taxpayer dollars. 400 of them sealed.
That's crazy.
Why doesn't the media care about figuring any of them out? Why don't they want to see any of that? They'll spend hours talking about a potential Trump P-tape in Russia, or Trump and Stormy Daniels, or Trump and Karen McDougal, Trump and all of his past relationships. Rightly so. That go ahead. But there's no play to the other side. They have no interest in figuring out any of the people in Congress that did any of this. And then, I mean, almost a little bit of respect to Al Franken. Very minor, it wasn't even actual like physical. It was miming, grabbing a woman, and he ended up resigning from that. When I bet you in retrospect he's kicking himself for it because he probably didn't need to. He probably could have rode that out.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean, I'm sure there's way worse shit that's going on in Congress underneath these sealed settlements, and there's no interest in figuring out what that is. And
it's really
like
strange.
With Acosta, they don't. It's a double standard, like it always is. They don't care.
Well, it's really strange because what the Trump presidency has also revealed is sort of this complicity with the mainstream media and the establishment and establishment politics. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's sort of, it was always there. You always knew that from the White House Correspondents' Dinner that politicians and journalists were yucking it up at cocktail parties around, around D.C. Right. But
I mean, I just saw pictures of a softball game outside of D.C. and it says Congress and the other one said press. Like they go to parties,
which is fine. I guess. But it was only uncovered because Trump is such a wrecking ball and doesn't care about all that shit. Right. That they were kind of like, wait, we had a pretty good game going on here. Mm-hmm. We didn't mention certain things, and we sort of helped each other out, and they sources for stories, and Trump kind of came in and blew that whole system up, and they're really pissed about it. Obviously.
Dude, it's just like the sexual harassment in Hollywood. They knew it was going on. Everybody knew. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew. The media people knew too. So when the media and the press say, we're here to uncover the hard facts and get to the facts. No, they're here to get to the facts that they want to show you. They know some other facts, or they know things that they could find out, but they're not going to do it. Jake Tapper on air said that he probably slipped up and shouldn't have said it, but he said the Harvey Weinstein thing, like someone had told me that, and it's just kind of like or Bill Cosby, dude, been doing that for 30 years. And Joe Rogan was like, yeah, I heard about that in green rooms like 15 years ago, but it's always just like, individually, like, what are you going to do? But that's the media's job.
Or even better with Jake Tapper. I mean, he's sending Hillary Clinton debate questions.
I don't know if Jake Tapper was doing that, but CNN was. Donna Brazile.
No, it was Jake Tapper, right? Tapper. I thought Tapper, or he had sent her an article, or he sent her an article to something.
Tapper got caught for that?
I remember specifically because everyone was like, what the hell? I thought Jake Tapper was such a great guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but either way, Donna Brazile
I didn't know that.
Sharing
my opinion
debate questions with Hillary Clinton before. They've always been complicit. Come on. It was obvious through the campaign because Trump was such a nasty figure that they were willing to do whatever it takes.
I told you this at the time. The night of, I was not going to vote for Trump. I was going to sit it out. And then I was like, you know what? I just hope he blows it all up. I just hope he blows it all up. And I bet you there's a large majority. What does he have? Like 38% of like that constant, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Ave and get away with it support.
Probably, yeah.
But that extra 15 to 20 that pushed him over the line were people like me who just said, like, look, I can see through these games. I can see through these games like Jim Acosta with this fake outrage and this playing to one side. And, I hoped, and it's what we just said, it's kind of proven true. Put Trump in there, and he's creating such an outrage that it's blowing up both sides. It's blowing up Hollywood, blew up the media. I mean, no one trusts CNN anymore. Nobody.
They don't.
But the thing is, like, is it going too far? Like, no one trusts anything anymore. We can't even have a debate with people. Like, I think I told you that story about the girl that I was friends with. I guess it was now. I don't know.
It's like coming out as a pedophile, man. I'm telling you.
Like, you try and have a conversation, and they're like, all of a sudden you're demonized. And if you say something like we were having a conversation, or at least I thought we were, and I would say a fact, and she'd be like, well, where'd you get that from? Fox News? I'm like, I mean, it's not like CNN doesn't say true things sometimes. Like, you can't just discredit everything, but we've gone in our boxes and we've blocked everything else off, and there's no even agreement on what a fact is anymore.
I don't know if there was ever agreement on what a fact is, but yeah, you're right. And we talk about this all the time. Social media just gets you further into your bubble. Right. I can only read so many news sources. I try to diversify it, but at the end of the day, you can't know all the facts, and sometimes you have to just accept what people are telling you is true. Like whenever me and you have a conversation, I'm not just gonna like say you pulled that out of thin air, or unless it's something I know about, right?
Right.
Like if you told me, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, if that fact is true, then blah blah blah. But we're getting to the point, like with your friend, where that fact isn't true, and I don't want to continue the conversation because it ends here. We can't even get to the conversation because we can't agree on the basic facts.
Right. There's no foundation.
It's like the Russia collusion thing that they've been talking about.
Yeah.
More and more. It's like, well, there are these indictments, and that Trump Manafort meeting, the Russian meeting, and don't you think? And we're not there yet. There's no proof. Which, again, I think the news that came out this week is that Trump probably knew about the meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya to get dirt on Hillary Clinton, and she ended up wanting to talk about the Magnitsky Act. Which my reaction to that is, who cares? I don't care. I thought about it, and I listened to a bunch of liberals really lay out their case for why this matters. I just thought, you know what? If someone from Russia contacted Hillary about dirt from Donald Trump, she would do the exact same fucking thing. Right. In fact, they pretty much do the same thing, because Fusion GPS, right. A UK special agent, was working with contacts in Russia to get this alleged P-tape from Donald Trump. So spare me the theatrics that Hillary Clinton had ran a moral campaign.
Right.
It's not true. Does it suck? Would I like for other countries to stay out of our elections? Yeah. I would like us to stay out of other countries' elections. Yeah. But that's just how it happened. And I can't go back and change it. Now we just have to analyze what happened and whether or not what happened, really affected the election. It didn't. And no votes were changed because of Russian hacking. Right. And so they're just pursuing this line because Robert Mueller is essentially a dog. They tell him to go find collusion, and now he's just going through everything, right? Now he's going through Trump's entire life, which and he could find something, sure.
Of course he could. And I mean, smart money knows that he probably will.
Yeah.
But will it be related to Russian collusion? I mean, this Paul Manafort thing, you'll hear people on CNN saying oh, this is related to Trump. This is a tax fraud case from years ago.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the campaign. He stupidly signed on to the Trump campaign. Trump wins, and now it's wreck anyone that was in sight of Trump. And you got Paul Manafort, this sleazy businessman, taking millions of dollars from Ukraine to be a Russian cop.
Yeah.
And there, I mean, have you seen some of the things from court? He's got a $15,000 alligator jacket. It just came out.
Yeah, the anaconda.
$450,000 on basically on his gardening over 5 years, and he had a large 20-foot in diameter circle white roses with a red M in the middle for Manafort, like on
Oh my
his
God.
estate. Like the dude's just been balling with this Ukrainian money, and like, yeah, probably broke a ton of tax laws. Sure, throw him in jail. I don't care, but that has nothing to do with Trump getting elected and collusion and the Russia gate, whatever you want to call it, you know. So, but they try and conflate the two to confuse people, because now we're 18 months into it, you know, and at this point I follow it closely, and I'm still like, you know, wait, what was that, and who was this, and how does it all integrate? And it's getting so convoluted, which is where I think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. If they do find something, it's going to be so easy to dismiss, because there's been so much nonsense and so much in between and so much, honestly, back and forth at the other side, that people are going to be able to dismiss it much more easily.
Yeah, and I also want to make a comment here. I don't understand Trump's strategy for dealing with this whole collusion thing. And
The way he tweets.
The way he tweets.
He looks guilty.
He looks guilty by
He
tweeting.
straight up looks guilty.
I mean, Rudy Giuliani is supposed to be this crazy good lawyer, but he's definitely not showing it, going on morning talk shows. I mean, he should tell the president, stop tweeting. I will get you out of this. Stop. Because every time Trump tweets about this is a witch hunt and Robert Mueller's doing this, the liberal feeding frenzy just fires up.
It gins up.
Fires up.
You know, 4D MAGA chess, maybe he wants them to be fired up.
I don't know.
I don't think that's the case. I think he's, like we've said, he is such a narcissist, and it grinds his gears so deep down that he beat Hillary Clinton and won the election and is president of the United States, and they're trying to discredit that. And that
I think that's all it
him
is.
So bad that he has to wake up every morning and just blast out some witch hunt tweets.
Yeah.
I think that's it. But does it look good? No, not at all.
No, it doesn't look good.
Not even a bit.
Whatsoever. I mean,
every day. I think I screenshotted one to you the other day. I was like, dude, he looks guilty. I don't think he is. I think there's nothing there, but he looks guilty.
It's his personality. I mean, that's just who the guy is. He's always been this way. I want to shift gears because he also tweeted about this. I think it was a loss for him.
Oh, big loss. I was pissed about this.
Definitely not a conservative thing to tweet about. And you're talking about the 3D guns, correct?
Yep.
So everyone is freaking out because 3D guns are this thing now. They've sort of been a thing. Right. They've sort of been a thing, which is kind of the problem. And, you know, there's this guy, Cody Wilson, who runs a company, Defense Distributed. Essentially what he does is he makes printing machines that come with files to make your own AR-15 and 1911 handgun. Is that what it's called? I have a video here. I mean, we can maybe watch this video just for 2 seconds so you guys can see what I'm talking about here.
And questioned whether the Trump administration should have granted his company permission in the first place.
Makes no damn sense at all to make those available.
Washington State's Bob Ferguson, who led the lawsuit by 8 attorneys general, argued that 3D printed plastic weapons are dangerous because they're untraceable, often undetectable, and require no background check.
What I'm doing is legally protected. I will go to the appellate level. I will go to the Supreme Court. I will waste all my time.
Wilson already published 10 blueprints as of last Friday, and the AR-15 schematics alone have been downloaded thousands of times.
There is nothing good that can come with Defense Distributed uploading these files.
Poe Murray is chairwoman of Newtown Action Alliance, a gun control group created after the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary.
It's a dangerous, slippery slope into our future, and our laws and our policies have to keep up with the changing advancements in technology.
The future is simply digital fabrication.
Wilson argues that it's already impossible to police 3D gun technology, and he believes he has a free speech right to publish the designs.
I'm talking about files. I'm not talking about the guns. I'm not a licensed gun manufacturer. I don't make guns at this location. I have data. I can share the data.
When somebody downloads a gun from your website with your blueprints and kills somebody with it, how are you going to feel personally?
I don't believe that I provided you anything other than the general knowledge of what an AR-15 is.
But to fund his legal fight, Wilson's company does sell these milling machines. They come preloaded with design files that allow anyone to make their own AR-15 or 1911 handgun in about 2 days. No serial number and no screening. They retail for $2,000, and there's a 3-month backlog.
Defense Distributed is still winning this legal battle, to be clear.
Andy Greenberg is with Wired magazine and has followed Wilson since 2013. He says in the long run, Tuesday's ruling is insignificant compared to the agreement Wilson already reached with the federal government.
Defense Distributed now has the ability to post whatever files they want, and no one has successfully been able to stop them permanently from doing that.
What makes you comfortable with a world where people can pump out guns in their garage anytime they want to?
What's going to make me comfortable is when people stop coming to this office and acting like there's a debate about it. The debate is over. The guns are downloadable. The files are in the public domain. You cannot take them back. You can adjust your politics to this reality. You will not ask me to adjust mine.
And so that last sentence there is what I wanted to focus on. Really, he said, that last segment was for Bob. I know Bob couldn't hear it. He was talking about, the guy, the interviewer says, when someone prints a gun and kills someone with it, how is that going to make you feel? And Cody Wilson says, well, how it's going to make me feel is when people stop coming in this office and pretending that there's a debate. The debate's over. The guns are online. There is no getting around this. And so this year especially has been a lot of talk about guns. And I understand that people who aren't that into guns, I'm certainly not the biggest gun nut. It appears scary because they paint this straw man of, terrorists, I guess, or these crazy people sitting in their garage, 3D printing a bunch of AR-15s and then going down and mowing down a school. People have been building guns forever. Right, people always make their own guns.
It's been legal to make your own weapon in the United States forever. It's never been illegal.
And these 3D printed guns that he's telling you,
first off, people get the wrong image, I think. Like, people have seen, a quick video on the internet of something like a little, thing getting 3D printed. And they think now that you can just print, a fully auto, a Rambo gun. First off, even if you print, a fully plastic AR-15, you still need metal components. These guns aren't invisible. Even the models that Cody Wilson's putting out there right now, they couldn't get through a metal detector. You can't have a fully plastic firearm because you need some more, beef behind it. You can't fire a gun and a bullet without having a metal component to it. So,
well, sure, and it's also already illegal in the United States to have firearms that are undetectable and untraceable.
Exactly.
So what is the new law? Because what people have been talking about
that's the thing.
Is right, and Michael Malice makes the great point that this whole debate is superfluous. It's gone. Files on the internet are on there. They've been downloaded, you heard in that interview, thousands of times.
That's the point, though. This is a speech. This is a First Amendment issue. I don't even view this as, in my opinion.
It's information. That's what they're giving you. They're giving you information.
There's online. You can figure out how to build a nuke.
Yeah, there's the anarchist cookbook.
What's in a nuke? How to build a pipe bomb. All that shit is information online, and it's already been ruled upon. That's information, and you're allowed to pass it.
And watching the mainstream media, they're sort of talking as if they're going to pass a law to do something about it. We can't stop people from sharing movies, from sharing music, from sharing, video games all illegally downloaded. And these are billion-dollar industries that have a very high financial incentive. Music producers have a big incentive to stop you from stealing movies. And to stop you from stealing music. That's kind of why the
Buy a $1 song on iTunes went out of that model went out of business, and now they have to put it on streaming services where you get your monthly fee.
Because it's too easy. Because the cost of illegally downloading something on the internet is virtually nothing. You can get a VPN. If you get
caught, you'll get screwed.
Sure.
But nobody gets caught.
Because you download a VPN. You make it seem like your computer's IP address is in North Korea, and there's nothing people can do about it.
And so tech savvy.
You have to
Pennsylvania downloading shit, but
I think we have to adjust. The people that are freaking out about this, I think you have to just adjust. Take a second, breathe. Okay.
Try and inform, because as soon as this settlement came out in court, first off, he's been fighting in court for years. Making your own weapon has been legal forever, and then it gets printed in one mainstream source, and you get Alyssa Milano, stop the 3D guns, and Chelsea Handler's talking about invisible weapons. You know what I mean? And then this fear mongering builds up, and now 3D guns is everywhere. You can't miss it on the news. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Now all of a sudden there are the armies of incels that are just 3D printing guns, getting ready for the next attack.
Right.
That's
Right.
not true. Again, and this goes back to, it almost paints back perfectly to the Acosta thing at the very beginning. They're just painting a reality of America that isn't true.
It isn't true.
They're scaring
Not even a
you.
reality of America, just like they're scaring you is right.
They're scaring
you. They're whipping up fear.
And they're whipping up fear because they want gun control, right? That's their whole goal is they want real gun control. So they got to scare you.
Hold on, we're on to something here, Matt. Because I was looking at all of the stories that came out about it, and I listened to a podcast with Cody Wilson, the actual guy behind all this, about 3 weeks ago now. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be like an issue in like a month by the time it gets out of court and like it eventually hits the mainstream and all the talking heads get to it. And that's pretty much what it took. And then the other day, anyone I follow on Twitter actually knows what they're talking about with guns, like Stephen Katowski or Dana Lash. They're just retweeting articles with just
Colin
like,
Noir.
most of this is false. Most of this is false. Like most of what's in here is not true. And I read some of them and like they're fear mongering that, well, people are going to be able to print weapons at will, as many as they want, undetectable, invisible. What if they go into airports? Like question mark in these articles, these news articles, but they're supposed to give you facts about what the thing actually is. And it's just not the case.
And it's also funny because it's like, what if they went into airports? They would get by because the TSA sucks at their fucking job.
TSA's a joke.
And the TSA, they did a test a couple. Is it a couple years ago now?
Dude, they've done
where
tons of them.
80% of like explosive material gets through TSA, where it's basically just a whole big deterrent show. Right.
It's just to scare normal people that want to bring like a gram of weed when they vacation.
Because this is what's scary for people, and I somewhat get it. It's this idea that
I only get
bad
it if you're
things.
informed.
Right. Well, no. Sorry. What I'm saying, they're scared that there are bad things that happen that are out of your control, and if people want to commit mass violence and kill a lot of people, they will find a way.
Yeah.
There aren't that many things that you can scribble on a piece of paper that are going to stop a lone shooter. It's just not the reality. If there was someone that just wanted to go shoot up a bunch of people, I mean, wouldn't they just buy a regular gun? I mean, if their whole goal is to just go out in a blaze of glory, why don't they just go down to the store and buy a weapon instead of spending, $5,000 and all this time on materials to print their own gun? It just seems like a huge workaround. Is that the other fear? That a bunch of people in the hood are going to be getting, untraceable weapons for gangs or something? I don't think so.
I haven't even heard anyone talk about that because people dying in the city doesn't matter to the mainstream media. I mean, ask anybody in Chicago that. I think it's just because, obviously, as we've seen, when there's like a horrific shooting, we've used that Bill Maher quote a million times. Like it's just horror porn. When there's a shooting, it's wall-to-wall coverage, and it tears at your heart, obviously, and it's bad. And you think, well, I go to school, could I get shot at school? Like I go to work, could someone bring a gun into work? But when you look at it, it's like shark attacks at the beach. Like people get bit by sharks at the beach, but more people die by coconuts falling out of trees every year. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And so what we've done with the school shootings is sort of scare everybody.
Yes, that's the point. They're fear-mongering over these issues to try and drum it up politically so that
I
they can achieve their ends. That is what this is.
I saw a school bought all their students or something bulletproof backpacks. I mean, that's just going to mess up some kid's psyche on his first day of school. Like, I got to put 13, 14-year-old boy, girl, they got to go put on bulletproof vests to go to school? We don't live in Somalia. You know what I mean? Like, trust me, if you go to school, you're going to be fine.
Well, I mean, here's a simple fact. Gun violence in America has gone down year over year. All the shootings that you're seeing on coverage. So just take that one fact into your head, and it dispels the whole notion that you see on television and propagated by the media. Matt, this whole thing is the media. They're just painting lies to people who don't have the time, don't have the interest, and aren't The low information voter, like Rush Limbaugh says, like it's a thing. People that see it on their phone real quick, they catch it on the 6 o'clock news real quick. The narrative's built. Guns are everywhere. Everyone's getting shot. And now there's a 3D printed gun where they're not going to be able to trace it or register it. Boom, I'm against it.
Boom. That's perfect.
That's exactly what they're doing.
You summarized it perfectly.
But how do you fight that, though? I mean, legitimately.
Well, this is the thing, which Cody Wilson, his whole point was, you can't fight about it. It's over.
Well, you can, but it's futile at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
you can try and pass as many gun laws as you want, but I just eventually, when the technology catches up and 3D printers are everywhere, made it much easier for someone to build their own weapon in their house, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's still going to take a lot of skill and know-how, and first off, the interest and the money to want to do it, especially at this point. Like, those printers aren't cheap. No one really has them in their own home. Like, this is sort of like down the line, but it's making real impact now. If you want to build a gun, first off, there's videos on the internet. Have you seen that? Someone builds a rifle out of like Pabst Blue Ribbon cans, and like you can build a weapon.
Yeah,
it's legal
for sure.
And now all of a sudden, liberals think that happened as of yesterday. Their view of history starts as soon as they get outraged about something.
Yeah, interestingly enough. So I guess, we're getting to 45 minutes here. We should probably move on to sort of the last topic that we wanted to talk about. This happened last week, but I think it's important to go over. And this is Ocasio Cortez. And we love watching her because she's the gift that keeps on giving. So this is Ocasio Cortez on The Daily Show, and I just want to play her because we're going to...
It's jaw-dropping.
We're going to play it right here, and then we're going to go through the numbers and sort of why this doesn't work.
Then the pragmatic side of it comes in, as you said. Mm-hmm. How do you pay for these? You always see people coming in with economic arguments, and they say, look, these numbers don't really add up. In order to get health care for everybody, this is what it would cost. That's going to be troubling. Even if you reverse the Republican tax deal, that's only going to make up 5% of what we need to pay for Medicare for all. How do you pay for education for all? How do you pay for all of these ideas?
So this is an excellent question. And in fact, there's a lot of back of the envelope stuff based on our values. So for example, I sat down with a Nobel Prize economist last week. I can't believe I can say that. It's really weird. But one of the things that we saw is if people pay their fair share, if corporations and the ultra wealthy, for example, as Warren Buffett likes to say, if he paid as much as his secretary paid, 15%, if he paid a 15% tax rate, if corporations paid, if we reversed the tax bill but raised our corporate tax rate to 28%, which is not even as high as it was before. Right. If we do those two things and also close some of those loopholes, that's $2 trillion right there. That's $2 trillion in 10 years. And it's one of the wide estimates is that it's going to take $3 to $4 trillion to transition us to a 100% renewable energy economy. So we got $2 trillion from folks paying their fair share, which they were not paying before the Trump tax bill.
Right. She's all over the place.
They weren't paying that before the Trump tax bill. If we get people to pay their fair share, that's $2 trillion in 10 years. Now, if we implement a carbon tax on top of that, so that we can transition and financially incentivize people away from fossil fuels. If we implement a carbon tax, that's an additional amount of a large amount of revenue that we can have. And then the last key, which is extremely, extremely important, is reprioritization. Just last year, we gave the military a $700 billion budget increase, which they didn't even ask for. They're like, we don't want another fighter jet. They're like, don't give us another nuclear bomb. Right. They didn't even ask for it, and we gave it to them.
So that was Ocasio Cortez telling us her grand plan on how we're going to pay. And it's amazing that she was almost like, did they not tell her that Trevor Noah was going to ask her this question? Because she didn't really seem to have a grasp on the numbers or an answer, really. And I think that's because she doesn't have an answer. I mean, this was supposed to be a layup softball interview right? Trevor Noah, very friendly to the liberals, and obviously now Democratic Socialists are the new black. They're the new black.
When's the last time he told a joke? A funny joke. A non-political funny joke.
I don't know.
I'll wait.
I don't really watch Trevor Noah anymore. I really think it's insufferable. I really miss Jon Stewart, because Jon Stewart, I mean, had a good head on his shoulders and would call out bullshit when he smelled bullshit. So anyway, I want to use Ocasio Cortez's numbers, because she said we're going to pay for democratic socialism. Mm-hmm. And we'll use conservative numbers to not mess with her, to not dunk on her, right?
Well, she made a number of errors right off the.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the first one she made was, she said it takes political and moral courage. Taking other people's money is not moral, and socialism isn't brave. Okay, this isn't some new brave idea. It's wrong. It's filled with platitudes that never come to fruition. It never does. So a few things I want to go through here first. She talks about a carbon tax. And a carbon tax to incentivize us to move to renewable energy. A carbon tax is just a tax, right? They're not incentivizing all that much. They're just taxing people, right? The reason we're moving towards renewable energy isn't because there are carbon taxes. It's because it's the way the culture, technology, and the money is going.
Well, I mean, yes, but, well, yes and no. So, I mean, yes, obviously, clearly a tax. My opinion, it'll have more harm than good. It will have more negative benefits and drag on the economic output of the country and the people being taxed than it will have a positive benefit, in that people will make conscious decisions to avoid the tax and switch over to green energy. It's the same thing that Obama tried with his bailouts and his handouts. You know, he tried to just give a bunch of government money to green companies to sort of jumpstart them. And my opinion the whole time is, you get the government out of it, you let the free market reign, and, you know, people are going to compete to have that first green energy that actually works. It's actually, you know, a substitute for gas, and that guy will be a trillionaire. You know what I mean? So you let the free market handle it, in my opinion, we'll get there quicker and we'll be cleaner along the way. But continue.
Sure. And, you know, she says that doing this carbon tax, it would get us around 3 to 4 trillion over 10 years. Okay, so not 3 to 4 trillion a year, 3 to 4 trillion over the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And of course, since the government is going to be giving you a bunch of freebies, it's okay that we're going to be taxing you more, and it's okay for the carbon tax. But what a carbon tax is, it's a regressive tax. It's going to hurt the poor, not necessarily the richest among us, right? I mean, if they're taxing carbon, right, gas prices go up, that doesn't hurt someone who's making over $300,000 a year. That hurts me. Because I have to get gas to get to work. That kind of sucks. It kind of matters to me whether or not gas is $4 or $2.
Right.
So, but again, since the government's going to give me a bunch of free stuff, then the taxes will be fine and the gas will be fine. Okay, sure. Another thing she said there's a $700 billion military increase. That's not true.
No, that's factually wrong.
She
the whole
just
budget
fudged
is
it.
$700 billion.
And hey, listen, Alexandria Cortez, maybe we can agree here. I'd love to cut down the military budget, but I don't think that's extra $700. If you spent nothing on a military budget, would help. And keep these numbers in mind, Bob. You're the math guy. I'm not, so I had to write them down.
But hold on. But
sure.
I mean, she gets up there and she's like, "Hold on, no, I figured it out. I did the math just now. Me and this Nobel."
No, sorry, it was
Nobel guy,
Nobel Prize-winning economist.
She's like, she comes on there as if she's Jesus with salvation. She's like, "No, guys, I figured it out. Democrat socialism, right here. This is the plan."
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, we're gonna get $700 billion from the military. It's like, well, that's the whole budget. That wasn't the increase. That was the whole budget.
Right.
She confused a year-over-year increase to a budget with the entire budget. But we're going to take this girl's advice and start taxing people and redistributing money. Sure.
Hey, maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe
can't think too hard about it, honestly.
Maybe that was a mental flub. Sure, I'll give her the benefit on that right here.
She meant to say maybe just the increase. Sure, we'll go.
Sure. Yeah. Now she also wants to tax the rich their fair share, which apparently Warren Buffett wants to pay as much as his secretary or something. I mean, I'll tell you so much. Warren Buffett is definitely paying more in taxes than his secretary is.
Right.
She wants to raise the corporate tax rate to 28%. She wants to close the loopholes. They think that will get us around $2 trillion a year. Okay? So
Close the
I
loophole.
want to.
She wants to close the loophole. So she wants to rewrite the tax code.
Right, exactly. That's what she's getting at.
That's what she means.
So
And
her
when you rewrite
plan.
the tax code. Continue.
Her plan gets us $5 trillion over 10 years. Okay, right? You got the carbon tax. You got taxing the rich. That gives you $5 to $6 trillion in new government taxes. Now, she wants free college, free medical care, a jobs guarantee, and Democratic Socialists, they basically want a jobs guarantee and UBI. Right? Those are like the whole thing.
That's essentially what they're working for.
For that, all those programs in 1 year, year one, $2.4 to $2.8 trillion that costs of new spending that we have to make up.
Okay, but then you got to factor in a little bit of a multiple there because it's government money and they don't do anything efficiently. And whatever they say it's going to be, it's about 30% more. So.
Oh, I'm getting there. So the conservative estimates for free college would cost about $63 billion, right? So $63 billion is what currently people total are paying for college. Okay. Now, this isn't including the fact that price increases on college are because the exact reason the federal government is involved in education, right?
It's a subsidy.
It's a subsidy. And you have to remember all the people that would take advantage of free college now that it's free, now that you just sign up and you go to public colleges.
Everyone would go to college.
So $63 billion is the conservative number. It's going to be more than $63 billion. Medicare for all, conservatively, is around $2 trillion a year. A jobs guarantee. Now remember, all these people have to be paid at least $15 minimum wage. $350 billion a year. And universal basic income, because you're going to have to subsidize people. You're going to have to subsidize people who don't want to work, can't work, and they don't have, they don't want the job. I mean, for whatever reason. I mean, she's a socialist. Who cares? You don't want to do it. I mean, doesn't mean you shouldn't have the right to live, right? You have the right to dignity and life and a roof over your head, even if you don't want to work. So we'll pay for you and we'll subsidize your lazy ass anyway. Adding all those together gets you to around $2.4 to $2.8 trillion a year. And like you just said, Bob, which is a great point, is now that this is all in the government's hands, do you really think that those numbers are going to go down? Do you really think that the government is magically going to become more efficient, that the government is going to become more efficient than a free market, even though in the history of statist governments, they have never done that before. They're not cutting costs. Costs will only go up. So we take in right now $4 trillion a year. According to Ocasio Cortez, she can grab us about 5 to 6 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, Bob, do you want to do the math in your head, or do you want me to just tell you the answer? Because she seems to be about like $2 trillion a year short.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, we take in 3, don't we? And we spend 4? We have close to $1 trillion deficit every year.
We take in 4 trillion a year.
And we spend 5?
So we must spend 5. Correct.
Okay.
So how can we pay for this? I mean, if we tax the rich.
So we take in 4 and we get, let's say 5, because 6, it's not going to work. You get 5 trillion over 10 years. So you get 500 billion every year in her additional taxing plans. So we're taking in 4.5 a year. We're spending 5 already, and she wants to add 2 to that.
Yeah.
So that's half that we take in, and we're spending 7 now. So now instead of $1 trillion deficit, we have $3 trillion of deficit. So we already have 20 trillion in debt. So we're adding 3 more trillion every year, and we've been artificially holding interest rates at 0 because we can't pay the interest on the debt we already have.
So how do we pay for this, Bob? Because what she says, she thinks that some grand plan, oh, don't worry, we're just going to restructure it.
Yeah, we're going to reprioritize, right?
What are you talking about? If you taxed
what you want to cut.
Dude,
that's what I'm interested in.
Very true. Dude, if you taxed everyone who makes above $300,000 a year, which is the 1%, okay, you could tax and take all of their money.
100%.
It won't do anything. The top 1%.
I thought you were going to hit me with that number. I heard it the other day.
I have it right here. Don't worry. The top 1% together, they make around $2 trillion a year. If we take all of their money, we
100%.
still don't have enough. This utopia that you want cannot happen. Okay? It really is. Socialism are a bunch of these platitudes, and they say, because they make you be the bad guy, right? Like, I'm the guy who doesn't like the homeless. I don't want to feed the hungry. It's like, no, I just don't think your programs work. I think they make it worse. You know, a lot of people bring up countries like Japan, for example. And this is an example of modern monetary theory, which people like Paul Krugman on the New York Times use. Japan is like minus 200% of their GDP in debt right now. They've got negative interest rates. They've got inflating money. And they're sort of held up. People are wondering us, well, they're minus 200% GDP in debt. Why can't we? It works. It works. Come on. Japan started instituting these policies after the dot-com bubble in 2001, 2008. They started putting a bunch of money into these rotten industries, right. and they're bloviating, and it's going to fall apart for them.
It's really ignorant thinking, because if you just apply it on an individual level, like, why can't I spend twice my salary this year? And then they look at you like you're the crazy one. They're like, why can't we just spend twice more than what we actually bring in? No, we'll just print it, as if Venezuela doesn't have 1,000,000% inflation at this very moment. 1,000,000%.
It's amazing, a case study. It really is. People are eating zoo animals.
Yeah, they're breaking into zoos and eating horses.
So
it's crazy they still have zoos.
Yeah, I don't think they do anymore. I don't think they get that many visitors. But again, she gets to go on TV and talk like this, where she doesn't really know the numbers. I'm using her numbers that she's given me. And Trevor Noah just gives her this platform, and a bunch of young millennials will cheer because it sounds so nice, but it's not actionable. It's not
Matt,
reality.
It's not a bunch of young millennials, which is what Ocasio Cortez is. You know, she's this. She. The saddest thing is actually, and the most demonstrative of how, God, once the media falls, which it's going to. Mm-hmm. The university's got to be next. She went to Boston University, which is like a prestigious school, got an economics degree, and that's what she comes up with. She can't distinguish between a year-long budget and a budgetary increase. You know what I mean? But okay, sure, she's like a know-nothing. She's her first year running for Congress, and like the people that are following her are these, you know, young millennials, idealistic, sure. But that's still not the case. The Democrat Party is moving towards this locks in step. And Chris Hayes, okay, MSNBC contributor, but right around the time that this interview came out, I have it right here, tweets out, I think a good answer for how will you pay for your agenda is, we're a very rich country, we'll figure it out. After 9/11, we found literally trillions of dollars for war. We didn't find trillions of dollars. We didn't like look under the Department of Defense and like, oh, look, we found some money under here. No, we borrowed trillions of dollars.
Right, and I was going to say,
debt. We
racked up debt. Exactly.
We didn't find money. We borrowed money.
Chris Hayes is like, oh, we just found all this gold under our bed, and it came out of nowhere. No, Chris Hayes, we're still paying for that shit. In fact, no, we're not paying for that shit. That's the whole problem, is that the debt keeps going up.
No one spelled out how to pay for it ahead of time, and yet somehow it got paid of. No, at the time, we were at the position where we could borrow a ton of money. I don't agree with it. That's not how things should work, but that's what happened. You know, you do have a credit card as a country. You can go into debt. We are now in way too much debt. And we're just going to add more. We're just going to see what happens when we add more, as if that hasn't happened in countries before, but we're not going to pretend to look.
So for the record, just so we're clear, Chris Hayes, the biggest Ocasio Cortez stan on Twitter,
pretty much,
is for going into more debt and is economically illiterate. Worse than me. I mean, like I tell you a million times, I'm not a math person, and I could figure this out. When I saw that interview, I said, something's not right. That's wrong. That's not right.
Just listen to her explain it. You're like, she just can't get the words out because she doesn't know what she's saying because it doesn't make sense. But I mean, look at us. It took us. I have moderately fast internet connection here. It took me about 5 minutes of Googling to figure that and realize, wow, this is way off and would never work. But then Chris Hayes, see, here's what I don't get, Matt. Chris Hayes isn't dumb. I've watched his show. He's well-spoken. He's smart on issues. You know what I mean? You know, is it ignorance? Is it? I mean, I don't really have another explanation. Is it ignorance? Is it willful blindness? Or is it intentionally misleading for some ends that I can't figure out?
Well, what I think it is he sees a young Democrat that he likes that's getting ganged up on by the right, rightfully, for saying this stupid shit, and he just kind of wants to give her some cover because...
so you think he's tweeting this and he doesn't actually believe it, but he's just taking the flack?
No, I think he
believes it.
He believes it.
I can't figure out how he could think that when he's actually intelligent.
Well, I don't know if he believes like her numbers and her like prescription for the problem, but I think he was just trying. I think he was just trying to take some of that flack away from her.
But all right, forget him specifically. Intelligent people of the left believe, maybe not in exactly what she said or her specific plans, but her general beliefs. Democratic socialism, Bernie Sanders socialism.
Yeah.
They, there are a lot of very smart people who believe this, and that's one issue. You could fall for like the moralness of the left and the compassion that comes along with being on the left, the faux compassion, in my opinion. But this issue, it's when numbers get involved and you get to the bottom line and it doesn't add up. So I don't know how smart people can believe this. And
like I was telling you,
if we're getting duped or they're
duping
themselves.
No. Like I told you, Paul Krugman of the New York Times, right? He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist. He's a modern monetary theorist,
right.
And their whole thing is that it's actually good for countries to go into debt. Like that's their whole thing is that no, a little bit of debt's good. You go into debt and you can keep going.
Times.
Well, he thinks you can go into the red, because their whole thing is that like countries aren't the same things as households, and so if you go far into the red as a country, you can always print more money and adjust your interest rates.
Which we're doing right now.
And
we're printing money. We're printing money at this very moment, and we've been holding interest rates at $0. I mean, if anyone has a bank account, how much interest do you get on your savings account? You get nothing. We've been holding interest at $0, and we've been printing money so that we can have more dollar supply, so that people will spend more, so that we can spike inflation. Quantitative easing is what that's called. And that was supposed to get us out of the Great Recession. You print a lot of money, you make a lot of money available, very cheap, very low interest rates, and people will take it and spend it and hopefully spike growth to get us out of the recession. And now we've been holding rates so low, and we've printed too much money that they're trying to get inflation up at this point, try and get us back to normal. We are not in a normal. I mean, the reason the economy crashes every 8 years is because the Federal Reserve, the way they're holding money, the way they're manipulating it. But these people think you can just keep doing that and it will not have any effects. I mean, I don't.
Right.
It's Paul Krugman, who when Trump gets elected says a first pass at when markets will recover, because of course when Trump got elected, markets crashed like 400 points, but I mean they spiked up the next day. But Paul Krugman, first pass at when markets will recover, never. That's Paul Krugman, the leading economist tells me markets will never recover.
Yeah, he's the ivory tower economist.
2,000 points higher on the Dow. I mean, we talk about facts and you can't believe what you say. Like, how much more does this complicate it when smart people are just spewing nonsense? Like, it makes you want to trust what they say even less.
Well, part of what they're doing is Trump derangement syndrome, and we bring that up a lot, and it sounds almost like a caricature.
You think they're just trying to run to the left as far as possible? Just as a response?
I think so. I think that what they see, what they're saying is, you watch the mainstream media, they're watching a Kremlin puppet run the White House, who is, covertly trying to destroy the country and prop up racists.
Right. You're watching a treasonous.
That's the world they're living in, right? And there's nothing you can say to get them back. And so whatever Trump does can't be right. It's actually bad in some way, right? Economy is up, but it's not actually up. And, the Dow will fall and crumble and the Nasdaq. And we talk about this all the time. Trump is stupid to own this economy. Don't own the economy because it's going to fucking bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
Especially this economy. But yeah, that's about it. Actually, I was gonna end it after that, but there is something I do want to bring up.
Go for it.
Because we didn't talk about any foreign policy stuff, and we're at an hour 8 minutes. But I want to play this last little bit. So Max Boot, who is a neoconservative, and he is, quite frankly, in my opinion, a national security threat to the United States. That is I know.
Okay, you're gonna have to define that one.
Him and John Bolton.
Why?
I put them both in the same category because Max Boot is looking to go to war at all times. Max Boot wants Russia. He wants war with Russia. That's what he does. I know. I'm in these circles that I follow, and I see the people that freak out, and I see the people that are, they're sort of upplaying it. But Max Boot, his view, and you're going to see it in a second, is Russia attacked the United States. The United States must respond. And if you say the United States should not respond or should respond diplomatically, you are covering for Vladimir Putin and you're an apologist.
That's pretty much how the rhetoric goes, yeah.
And so the only way to move there is to crank up the pressure. What Max Boot wants is more sanctions on Russia. He wants NATO as far and as close to the Russian border as possible. He is a straight-up neoconservative. There's never been a war that Max Boot will not support. And I want to play this because he was on Anderson Cooper's show with Stephen Cohen, who Stephen Cohen is Professor Emeritus at New York University of Russian Studies. Okay, he's a very smart man. Okay, this isn't some Putin puppet, or this isn't some Breitbart writer that doesn't really understand the issue and is sort of just going against the mainstream media, okay? I want to play this video for you guys, and I just want you to listen.
Actually took place in that meeting. Max Boot is here, CNN Global Affairs analyst, and Stephen Cohen, Professor Emeritus of Russian Studies and Politics at NYU in Princeton. Max, let's start with you. I mean, the president's saying he had a great meeting with Vladimir Putin. The fact is, it's been 2 weeks now. We still don't know what went on behind closed doors between these two.
Well, that's exactly right, Anderson, and Trump is aggrieved that he's not getting the credit that he thinks he deserves, but we have no idea what the heck happened. And if you listen to Mike Pompeo's testimony last week, even Secretary Pompeo doesn't have a clear idea of what happened. This is not normal. This is not what normally happens when two leaders meet. You're seeing Trump continuing to praise Putin, and we don't know the substance of what they discussed. That's a scary scenario.
Stephen, I mean, do you think it's problematic that we don't know what was said in that 2+ hour meeting between these two world leaders? And you know, as Max said, it didn't seem like Mike Pompeo or others maybe even have a firm grasp on what was said.
I don't think it's unusual. We do have a pretty good sense of what was discussed, both from what Trump's people have said, but equally from 2 or 3 speeches Putin has given. Let me just rattle them off, because I was looking at them today. They discussed trying to avoid a new nuclear arms race by keeping alive 2 treaties that exist. They talked about peace in Syria, including securing Israeli borders from Iranian forces. That would be very important to Americans, I think. They talked about the possibility of a joint alliance against terrorists who are in pursuit of weapons of mass destruction. They talked about doing more business, which doesn't make much sense because of the sanctions. And they talked in some way about the United States becoming more involved in the Minsk agreement, which is the only agreement we have to resolve the Ukrainian crisis.
But how do you know that's what they actually talked about?
Those are good things.
You have to take Putin's word for this. This is what they talked about.
The Russian side has said.
Right. So you're going on the side. You're believing Vladimir Putin on this.
Well, I don't want to shock.
So I just wanted to pause it right there, Bob, because what Max Boot just said is, how do you know that's what they talked about in their meeting? You believe Vladimir Putin, and he's got this smarmy little smirk on his face that I just want to slap off. You know, and Stephen Cohen's about to make the point, because their whole problem is that Trump and Putin met for 2 hours and no one knows what was said, and how could you ever trust what Trump says, and how would you, even if you cross-reference it with his staff and what Putin's staff said, how could you ever believe them? But I just want to pause right there listen to the tone that Max Boot puts immediately, right? Stephen Cohen, all he does is say, hey, so, you know, I looked at the press releases, I looked at, you know, the Russia side, I looked at Trump's side, this is what it looks like they talked about, blah, 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 and Max Boot goes, you're trusting Vladimir Putin? Like, fuck you, dude, fuck you. Sorry.
But I believe Vladimir Putin on several things. But the point is this has been confirmed by a number of Trump's people. Trump himself made some statements. We discussed this.
It hasn't really been confirmed. I mean,
he doesn't talk like a normal diplomat.
What President Trump actually said to Vladimir Putin is only known to Vladimir Putin and to President Trump. Even if Putin comes forward and says, oh, I said this, or even if President Trump comes forward and says, oh, I said this, we don't know for sure. The only thing we know for sure is what happened in that press conference. Did what happened at that press conference concern you at all, Stephen?
Well, let me give you an example. I, being older than both of you, maybe you don't remember. In early 1986, President Ronald Reagan met alone with then Soviet leader Gorbachev for, I think, about 2.5 hours. And everybody was very upset about it because Reagan was getting older in years, and people were worried. When the guys came out, Reagan and Gorbachev, they said, we've decided to abolish nuclear weapons. And aides on both sides said, you can't do that, just like that. So they backed off. But what happened 1 year later? Reagan and Gorbachev abolished a whole category of nuclear weapons, the intermediate range. Okay. So good things got done, and nobody else knew, except the two translators, what was said in there. Okay. So there's precedent.
President Trump today talked about meeting with the Iranian president, Rouhani, with no preconditions. Does that surprise you? Would that be wise?
It's not surprising to me at all, Anderson. In fact, I predicted it a week ago when Trump came out with that semi-deranged tweet in all capital letters threatening consequences the likes of which you've never seen before to Iran. Based on his pattern, you can pretty easily predict that after threatening these horrible consequences, Trump will then try to set up a meeting, glad hand, and before long he'll probably be praising Rouhani for being incredibly intelligent, smart, witty, warm, and reaching a deal that has no substance to it whatsoever. That's his pattern. The striking thing to me is that although he's willing to threaten North Korea, he's willing to threaten Iran, he never threatens Russia. And that's why a lot of intelligence officials think that there is something highly suspect in the relationship between Putin and Trump.
I have no idea what Mr. Booth is talking about. He wants Trump to threaten Russia. Why would we threaten Russia?
Exactly, Stephen Cohen. And Bob, I don't know if you could hear that. I don't think you can. But, Anderson Cooper draws it back, and after Stephen Cohen tells him, actually there is precedent for two foreign leaders meeting privately. Reagan and Gorbachev did it, and a year after they did it, they decided to get rid of some of their medium-range ballistic and nuclear weapons. And then Anderson Cooper sort of pulls it back and wants to relate it to Iran, right, where Trump did make that deranged tweet. Fair enough. It seems to be like his MO, where he's gonna use Bolivian language and sort of get mad and then reel it back and set up a meeting,
right, with
no preconditions. But that's a good move. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with no preconditions. I think you should always be open to talking to people. It's not a bad thing.
I mean, I would err on the side of talking for sure.
Because what Max Boot wants to do it here is, and exactly what Stephen Cohen said, are you saying that we need to go confront Russia right now? We want to start fighting Russia? What is your goal here, Max? You know what I mean? I don't know. Are we supposed to try to fight Iran too? Like, we're not allowed to talk to them? You're not even allowed to meet up with Vladimir Putin and have a discussion? He's making diplomacy impossible. Okay? And diplomacy is how you solve these arguments and geopolitical struggles without war.
Right.
We should always go for diplomacy over hard power. I don't understand why Max Boot's doing this, and Stephen Cohen gives it to him in this last little part too.
You've got two nuclear
superpowers. Because they're attacking us. Russia is attacking us, Professor Cohen. Russia is attacking us right now, according to Trump's own director of national intelligence.
Russia, I've been studying Russia for 45 years. I've lived in Russia and I've lived here.
And you've been consistently an apologist for Russia in those 45 years.
Russia hasn't... Excuse me, what did you say to me?
I said you've been consistently an apologist for Russia in those last 45 years.
Max Boot just called Stephen Cohen, this guy, 45 years living in Russia, studying Russia, pretty accomplished professor, says that you've been covering and apologizing for Russia for 45 years. This is what I mean. Stephen Cohen just says, why do you want to have war with Russia? Shouldn't we talk with Russia? And Max Boot goes, you're an apologist. They're attacking us. We need to attack them back. Okay, I'm against war. Max Boot is not how you get peace. Max Boot is the opposite of peace. And this is also where I disagree with Ben Shapiro vehemently. Same thing, where this whole how could you ever meet with someone with no preconditions and we got to ratchet up the power. No, stop. We've tried that. People die.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but when you can meet with conditions, it's definitely preferable to no conditions.
Okay, sure.
Right.
I mean, like, are you saying...
So I don't think you throw that out the window right away. If sanctions are already on a country and you can ratchet them up to bring them to the table, come from a position of strength, like, that's preferable to war. And it's preferable to coming with no strength and no conditions. I mean, I think there's a hierarchy to it. There's a balance between where you walk the line between coming from a weak position but talking and, getting closer to war. I think you should walk that delicately.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And that's where the art of foreign policy comes in. But I think it's more interesting, these people, these warhawks, these neocons, that I mean, if something grinds your gear that I know of, it's that, certainly.
All of them, dude. All of them.
When you take a step back and just listen to their approach on these issues, the way he talks to the other guy here, is there really any difference between Max Boot and the way he puts down the other man's arguments just blankly without even contemplating them than when, a leftist runs into someone and just blanketly calls them a racist and refuses to hear any of their points of views because they've already assumed they know what they're about?
That's a good point, Bob. It really is. It's the same thing. Max Boot, in his mind, Max Boot has the moral high ground at all times.
Exactly.
Max Boot has the moral high ground. We want to use American military strength to shape the world in our image, and we're right and they're wrong. And if you oppose that, then what you really are is you're an apologist for America's enemies and you hate America or some bullshit like that. Right? And what we're saying is that war is a last-ditch effort, that going and spreading these ideas, right? I mean, there's something to be said about soft power and the spreading of values. I think Douglas Murray puts it really well as a neoconservative himself. He'll say, we need to assert our values because our values are superior, right?
Sure.
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, those are values that we think would work for all people. But they don't have to be violently asserted, right? You do it by your actions, by diplomacy, by sharing of your culture. You don't do it by ratcheting up tensions and pushing NATO ballistic missiles up against Russia. That's not how it happens. Because what it's done and what these sanctions have done is people in Russia are rallying around Vladimir Putin. The young people in Russia like him. They like him because they're against us, because they see what we've done in the past 15, 20 years. And they're like, fuck those guys.
I mean, yeah.
And
they're certainly rallying around him.
And you know me, I got the American flag right there. I love America. But we haven't been doing a good job foreign policy wise and spreading our values. And we've hurt a lot of people and we've hurt our cause in the meantime. And people like Max Boot want to continue down that path. I don't see the point. So that's my little spiel on Max Boot neocon. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Bob, before we wrap this up?
No, I got it. I think I got it all off my shoulders. To absolute nonsense.
Yeah, we definitely did. We got a 21-minute episode, so it's a long one for the people that do listen.
That's good.
Again, this is the OR Podcast. Thanks for listening. My name is Matthew Spurrier. Follow me on Twitter at Planet Politico. Bobby Juliana, go follow him over at Bobby J Politics. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Very important.
Give that a check.
Give it a check. Watch us live. Listen on iTunes, Google Play. Yeah, we're gonna be. I'm uploading this onto Facebook, so watch out for the Facebook likes. I'll need you to like that for me as well, guys.
There it comes.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week. Peace.